In this video, we will be discussing how to write an equation of a line in slope-intercept form. You'll be expected to apply your knowledge in class, so pause and replay as needed. Before we get started with the learning goal, some vocabulary that you're going to need in today's lesson is, the first one is slope. That we know is the change in y, which is right here, over the change in x. We've talked now at length on how to find slope from a graph, from a table, and from 2 points. So if you look at the diagram over here to the right, you will notice that first we're counting on the x and y. It doesn't matter which one you do in which order, but you can see that here if you go up from 2 to 5, that's an increase of 3, so that's where the 3 comes from. And then you move over 1, so from 0 to 1, that's where the 1 is coming from, and that is your slope. So in this case, the line here has a slope of 3. The second thing, which is new, is called the y-intercept. Y-intercept is the value of y at the point where the line crosses the y-axis. So if you look at this diagram here, you'll notice that this is the point where the line crosses over the y-axis. And the y value at this point is 2. So this is really the point 0, 2, right here, 0, 2. And notice how we only care about the y value. That is why we're saying it is the y-intercept. We are going to need the slope and the y-intercept to do our learning goal. So for your launch, first thing I want you to do is determine or figure out the slope of each line given below. So on line A, for each of these, you are going to find the slope. Pause the video and push play to check your slope. Let's see how we did. The slope of the first line is 1/3. The slope of the second line is -1. The slope of the third line is 3/4. Remember that your slope is your change in y over your change in x. So make sure that you write your vertical distance on top of your horizontal distance. So the next thing I would like you to do is to identify the y coordinate of the point where the line crosses the y-axis, or what we had just said was called the y-intercept. So look at each line and see what value it crosses the y-axis. Pause the video, push play when you're ready to check. So now that you have identified the y-intercept, you'll notice that the first one hits at where y is -2, the second one hits at where y is 4, and the third one hits at where y is -3. So now we're going to scroll down, and the next thing says to check or compare your answers from A and B here to the function rule that you see at the top. A and B, what do you see at the top? A and B, what do you see at the top? Think about how your numbers compare to the function rule. Pause the video and then see how you did. You should notice that the value of A for each line is the number in your rule that is multiplied by x. So here you see that 1/3 is multiplied by x. Here this is like an imaginary -1. And here there is a 3/4. So it's the number in front of x, which is called our coefficient. The number that signifies b here in the equation ends up being your constant, or your number that's at the end of your equation by itself. So if you look, the b is your constant of your equation or of your rule. This actually will happen every single time we're looking for an equation of a line. Now let's look at this line at the bottom of our classwork. First, I'm going to identify the slope, which at this point we should be pretty routine at identifying the slope. So I'm going to pick 2 points I'm going to pick this one and this one. And I'm going to count to figure out the slope. So I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boxes. So that's -6 in the y direction. And then I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 in the -x direction. And since I'm going left, it's negative. So my change in y over change in x is -6 over -3. If I simplify that, my slope is 2. If you need to pause the video to finish that process, please do so. So now let's find the y-intercept. The y-intercept, remember, is just that point where your line crosses the y-axis. So this is the point 0, 4. And remember, we only care about the y value. So we only care about the 4. So just like at the top, we are actually going to write our equation of the line. But before we do that, there are some things we need to write down for our notes. So the first thing you need to know about writing a rule is it always starts with y equals. So I'm going to start with y equals. The coefficient that is multiplied by x is the slope. So in this case, our slope is 2. So I'm going to write 2x because that's my coefficient of x. The y-intercept is the constant, or basically that number that you add or subtract in the equation. Anytime your number is positive, we're going to write +4. And if it were negative, we would subtract 4. So lastly, the last thing I want to do is whenever I am making an equation or a rule for a line, I must always give that line a name by writing its equation on the line. So I'm actually going to erase this information. It's okay if you leave it there. And you want to make sure now that you write your equation of this line on the line. So y equals 2x plus 4. It does not matter where on the line you write it. You just need to basically identify that this is the line that's equal to y equals 2x plus 4. So now let's make this more formally mathematical. If a line has a slope that we said we're going to use the letter m to identify the slope, and it has a y-intercept that we're going to identify as b, then the line is described by an equation. Remember, y can be interchanged with f of x. So we're going to write this, which is called slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form is when you write your equation as y equals mx plus b. Remember that the m is your slope and the b is your y-intercept. Please pause the video and see if you can do the next 3 examples by yourself. Let's see how we did. Here, remember you always start with y equals for each of the equations. The slope goes in front of x. In this case, you don't have to write the 1, but you absolutely can, because we know that 1x is the same thing as x. And then you want to put your constant, including its sign. Notice how this one was a -4, so I wrote -4 in my equation. In this video, we discussed how to write an equation of a line in slope-intercept form. Remember, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, where m is your slope and b is your y-intercept. If you need to replay this video to gain more understanding, please do so. If not, please finish the rest of your work on this page.